What's your homeowners association horror story? When we were privately renting in a townhome community, the dumpster had video surveillance so that the HOA could fine anyone breaking the rules as far as what we were allowed to dump. One day both myself and So get a bitchy call from our property manager alerting us that HOA has fined us $250 for illegal dumping. The property owner will have to pay it and we will have to reimburse him. After racking our brains about what we could have possibly thrown out that wasn't allowed, we decided to call up the HOA to see if we could see the video. They would either transfer us to someone else that would hang up, or their hours would change to where no one would answer the phone, or they'd promise to get the video to us the next day, etc. This went on for about 2 weeks. Finally Miso got to see the video while I was at work. I texted him to find out what was on it, and he said the video was of a middle-aged Asian lady throwing out a bunch of furniture. It was the stupid property owner's freaking wife. I wanted to tear out a bunch of evergreen bushes that ran alongside my house. We tore them out and were debating on whether to burn them on site or put them in a burn pile that I knew about 10 miles or so away. I opted to just burn them right there. I have an open area next to my house that is about a 1 lot size. We put the bushes in the open, ran a garden hose out to the area in case it spread. Then I decided that I should get a burn permit. So I printed one off and took it to my fire station to be signed. I came back and put the burn permit on my steps and set the fire. The bushes were fairly green, so they didn't want to burn aside from the initial flame up. I needed some accelerant. So I ran to the dollar store and grabbed some cheap lighter fluid. Came back and my buddy tells me that some HOA dick came by and told us that we couldn't burn things. He said that he didn't care and was calling the fire department. About then, I hear the fire trucks getting closer. HOA dick pulls up to see what transpires between me and the fire department. Fire truck pulls up, sees us doing everything right. They turn off the lights and sirens and waved at us. HOA peels out and leaves. We all laugh. I'm doing a giveaway of 4 $25 Amazon gift cards when I reach 1500 subscribers. Like and subscribe to participate. Not an HOA, but an obnoxious neighbor we had growing up. We had a long backyard that bordered on the back line of several other people's yard. This one guy was a real piece of work and complained about everything. The big things I remember, my younger brother had a camping themed birthday party and my dad made a small fire for us all to roast s'mores, like 4 logs, about 100 yards from any structure or property line. Neighbor called the fire department to report an illegal fire. The fire department shows up and has to drive around the block 3 times before they even get a whiff of smoke. Firefighters come to the backyard, tell my family they're not doing anything wrong and doing everything right as well, and shares a birthday s'more while the neighbor glares from his backyard. Part of our property included a dry stormwater detention pond, kinda like this. My dad would mow the grass and spray in a baseball diamond. We'd put our soccer nets down there and it was the only sledding hill in the neighborhood. The neighbor starts complaining to the EPA that my dad was disrupting the natural wetlands habitat of a man-made retention basin in a 10-year-old subdivision. The EPA told my parents of the complaint because it was so ridiculous. Neighbor gets mad because one of the pine trees we planted along the border of his fence was growing too big and was encroaching on his property line. He insisted that we transplant it. Fair enough, we moved the tree. That summer, the neighbor's pumpkin patch started growing through the fence onto our yard. This guy was really into his garden. My dad didn't say a word. A few weeks after the pumpkins started growing and really started looking nice, my dad weed hacked the vines of all of the ones that had grown on our side of the fence and chucked the pumpkins over the hill. HOA said there was a surplus of funds and sends out a survey to find out what people want the money spent on: swimming pool, basketball court, etc. A few months later we get a notice that they are raising the dues because they need more money to afford all the new amenities we requested. The entire board was voted out the following year. Holy F, what a bunch of scammers. When my brother first moved into his condo, quiet hours were 10 PM to 6 AM Sunday Thursday, never really enforced. A couple years later 2 board members sold, 2 new came on board. One being a 60Y/O man. Quiet hours are now 8 PM to 6 AM Sunday Thursday, 10 to 6 Friday Saturday. The 60Y/O guy will knock on your door if he thinks you are too loud. It's a very young metro neighborhood, loft complex. The old guy came to his door to complain a couple weeks ago BC he thought the pizza delivery guy was too loud. I'm Airbnb-ing at a condo right now in a huge ski resort town. First walk out the door this morning to go skiing, and we are walking down the steps when this old guy opens the door and starts screaming at us for walking too loudly at noon. Not me but my sister, her front door broke because some delivery people effed up and she had it replaced. Apparently it was the wrong color according to the HOA, and she would be fined $500 a week unless it's corrected or removed, because it's totally fine to not have a front door in LA. Another is from a sweet old lady that invited me in for tea and cookies. When I was house hunting the HOA there was $285 a month, below average for Sokol, and she told me that, while she didn't mind the committee so much, she wasn't happy when 2 of her potted plants were shattered by kids playing ball around her house, and the HOA wanted to fine her $65 a day until she has them removed from her front yard. I ended up buying a home without HOA. How much do you have to suck at deliveries that you break the effing door? Our HOA hired a management company to run the day-to-day business. What that meant was a guy would ride around taking pictures of petty bullshit and mailing violations to homeowners. I had so many quarrels over nothing. Well, it turns out the HOA didn't have any teeth behind the violations, since the bylaws didn't allow fines. Somebody came up with the bright idea to start imposing fines to ensure compliance. That is when I ran for and won the vice presidency of the board. Another gentleman who was fed up with this crap ran and won as well. We didn't have the power to dissolve the HOA, but we decided the next best thing was to paralyze it. Without us in attendance, the board could never reach quorum to conduct business. And they never did. A true hero. When we moved in we got permission to build a fence. They said cedar treated pine was fine. Well, a neighbor didn't like that and called HOA. We got an email shortly thereafter from HOA Prees that there were some concerns about our wood. So he came by real quick to give it a good sniff to see if it was, in fact, not cedar. He is now king fence sniffer. My brother lives in a neighborhood with a very strict HOA. His neighbor, 27-year-old woman, passed away in a tragic accident leaving behind her husband and 3 children. HOA fined the family because the people visiting the family for the funeral couldn't all fit in the driveway, so some parked on the side of the street. I think I've posted this before, but I'm still fuming over it years later, so here goes. I went away for a long weekend and left after work on Thursday. Late Friday afternoon, my water heater burst in the attic of a 3-story home and flooded my entire townhouse. When my neighbor got home from work he saw gallons of water running from underneath my garage door. When he realized I wasn't home, he tried to find my phone number, and when he couldn't, he called the HOA to notify me. The lady that answered said that since it was after business hours, it was 5:01 at this point, the matter would have to wait until Monday. My wonderful neighbor ended up calling the non-emergent police line, and they came and shut my water off from the street. When I got home Sunday morning, my entire house was damaged and I could see my attic from my basement. After a massive panic attack and a frantic call to my insurance company, we started the process of repairs. The cherry on top was that I needed to have a dumpster placed in my driveway and a moving pod to remove what was left of my furniture while they began drying out the house, and I got a visit from the HOA. They didn't like how unsightly my home had become and wanted these items removed from my driveway. I essentially told them that they could take their complaints and go F themselves with them. I got a little revenge too because I stopped paying their stupid fee since they couldn't find me before 6 months, and I was moving in less than 5 months. I'll never own another home with a HOA ever again. Everyone in our neighborhood received fines for leaving garage cans at the road. It was trash day. but you didn't put it out 39 seconds before the truck arrived and remove it 13.6 seconds after. Shame on you. For going to work, inline the HOAD. Didn't happen to me personally, but I guess I can tell you about my parents' experience with their HOA. Dad retired and decided that he really wanted to buy a camper and travel. Mom was all about it, both of them very excited. So dad runs off and trades his F-150 truck for a F-250 with a biggest diesel V8, buys a gooseneck camper, and waits for spring. Camper in the backyard, truck in the garage, no big deal. Not long after he gets a visit from a lady. She's got a list of rules from the HOA that was established long after my parents had built their house, something like 15 years later when the subdivision really took off, saying that dad couldn't have the camper on his property because it was an eyesore. Mind you, this camper is in the backyard, behind a 6-foot privacy fence. You could still see it, sure, but it's not like it was old and in disrepair either. So here's my retired parents living in a subdivision that has an HOA that was established long after they built their home, and the HOA is expecting them to abide by rules they didn't agree to. He never moved the camper. When I was a kid, I lived in one of the 2 front rooms of the house, which were the hottest in the summer and the coldest in the winter. My dad didn't like to use the AC, so we all just had fans. One summer it got so unbearably hot in my room that fans just weren't cutting it, and I was miserable. My dad then put an AC unit in my window, and it was awesome. But it was short-lived because the HOA told us to take it down because it was an eyesore. My parents told them it was for their child, but they didn't care, so my parents had to take it down. The kicker is that, just down the street, a guy who had the exact same model house as us had an AC unit installed in the same exact window as the one we had it in, and the HOA never said a word to him. They sent us a series of nasty notices to remove the dead tree in our front yard. The tree had lost all of its leaves, and it was unsightly, apparently. The catch is that they sent us this notice in November. You know, like, fall. When perfectly healthy trees lose their leaves. We pretended we didn't understand which tree they were talking about until spring, when the tree magically came back to life. We are also going to fine you for leaving all that strange white stuff in your yard in the winter. You have a message from the crazy HOA man. Like and subscribe to not have to deal with me.